With the amount of Assassin's Creed games there are right now, some may say a bit too many, and how different a lot of them are, there's one that really stands out as the most different and the most divisive, and to me that's quite evidently Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Before I continue discussing one great open world RPG, let's talk about another legendary one, and how it's teamed up with today's sponsor Opera GX. If you're a Witcher fan, this browser is made for you because they have introduced an official Witcher mod straight into the browser, and trust me, this is not no ordinary browser. Opera GX lets you customize your entire experience, and now thanks to their collaboration with CD Projekt Red, you can bring the world of The Witcher right to your screen. Simply head into the GX store right inside the browser, and you will find hundreds of different mods you can mix and match, one of which is this official Witcher theme setup. I'm talking custom dark or light Witcher wallpapers, background music straight out of the game. There's even custom Witcher keyboard and tab sounds that you'll definitely be familiar with. And that's not all, as even the splash screen when you open the browser is Witcher themed. Inside the Witcher mod you'll find the Witcher Hub, which is basically your personal bestiary built for the web. It's right in the GX corner and makes it very easy to stay connected with the latest news, updates and exclusive content for anything Witcher related. You can explore videos, trailers and music straight from the world of The Witcher, whether you're looking for something intense or more relaxing. And what's even cooler is that there's an interactive map where you can revisit those iconic locations from the game, meaning no extra searching or fast travel required. And hey, if you need tips or guides, the hub includes an IGN guide with everything you need, from gameplay help to story choices to the best gear, and so much more. It's a simple way to get quick answers without leaving your browser. And for true adventurers, Red Kit lets you craft your own Witcher legend, build new quests, create characters and literally rewrite the world. You can also check out the winners of the modding contest and even stay up to date with news about The Witcher 4. Honestly, it's a no-brainer. It's everything a Witcher fan could want without ever leaving your tab. And hey, if you're worried about switching browsers, then don't be. Opera GX makes it super easy to import everything from your old browser, including bookmarks, browsing history, and even Chrome extensions. So if you're curious, check out the link in the description to download Opera GX. It's an awesome way to refresh your browser while supporting the channel. I think there are three types of fans when it comes to this game. First, you've got the people who just love it. They think it's a gorgeous, massive open world RPG that's fun to dive into, and they don't really care about the opinion of anybody else. Then there's the second group, the ones who see it as the most disrespectful thing to ever exist in history, and it's an insult to what Assassin's Creed is supposed to be. And finally, there's the third group, which is where I like to think I fall. These people can appreciate a franchise evolving, but also will call out the good and bad that came with it. Let me know which type of fan you are down below. So it's 2025 now, which means it's been 7 years since the release of this game. Holy shit, how has it already been 7 years? Time is flying by way too fast. And that's honestly kind of scary. And just think about it, Assassin's Creed Mirage is about to be 2 years old. 2 years! I swear that game just came out. But today we're not talking about Mirage. We're going back to ancient Greece to revisit one of the most, the most divisive entry in the entire series, and that is Assassin's Creed Odyssey. When this game first came out, it was the highly anticipated follow-up to Assassin's Creed Origins, which, evidently had breathed new life into the franchise with its Egyptian setting and a new take on the gameplay by introducing the RPG elements we've come to know. I think the evolution from Syndicate to Origins was definitely needed, as evident by the downwards trend in sales numbers, and hey, it worked. The most successful AC games are the RPG games. Ubisoft took that formula and expanded it even further by putting us dead center in the middle of what would be the Peloponnesian War in 431 BCE, letting us play as either Alexios or Cassandra. They also introduced the biggest open world the series had ever seen at that point. I'm pretty sure Valhalla has since taken that crown, but regardless, Odyssey's world was nothing short of stunning and quite massive. And for a while the hype train was full steam ahead. But as the dust settled, especially today, and the hype for newly released products dies down, that's where we come to stop and think, and then actually analyze a game for what it truly is. Now I'll say this, Odyssey brought a lot of new fans into the franchise. For many people, this was their very first introduction to the Assassin's Creed games. In fact, you know what, if you're watching this and Odyssey was your first AC game, comment that down below. Now I will say this also created a bit of a problem, because it ended up splitting the Assassin's Creed community even more. Ever since Odyssey came out, there's been this ongoing new games versus old games debate among fans, a divide that's, well, let's just say it hasn't always been the friendliest. And Ubisoft has definitely played into this, but in a way that keeps pushing away a lot of longtime fans. I mean, that's why so many of the OG Assassin's Creed YouTubers just up and left. They just did not like where the franchise was headed. But don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. Well, for now. Personally, I'm a big fan of both eras of Assassin's Creed, the classic style and the new RPG direction. So in this video, I want to revisit Assassin's Creed Odyssey in 2025 with fresh eyes, especially after playing Shadows. I want to break down a few things it absolutely nailed, a few things it didn't, and pretty much bounce back and forth between the two. Now, this is not going to be one of those long, drawn out 3 to 5 hour retrospectives that just pad things out for YouTube RPM. Yeah, you know the type. Nobody really has time for that, and I just want to respect your time. Instead, I just want to focus on specific aspects of the game that really stand out, for better or for worse. I think the most glaring positive about Odyssey is the world. I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? Because even in 2025, it's still very easily near the top. I mean, come on, it's ancient bloody Greece. One of the coolest settings any type of media could go to. If you're a history person, or even if you have a desire about the olden settings, this is a world that's perfect. You've got Athens at its height, you've got Sparta being all Spartan-y, and some of the most interesting historical figures just there in this game. In my honest opinion, I'd say a game like Valhalla simply cannot touch that. Its quote-unquote big cities feel like pastoral villages in comparison. Now, in terms of the actual world, it's huge, like really huge. I'm talking zoom out on the map for the first time at Kefalonia and your jaw just drops huge. I know I'm not the only one who was shocked when I opened the map for the very first time. It's pretty much all of ancient Greece and you can go pretty much anywhere. See that mountain in the distance? You can climb it. In fact, let me just give you a proper sense of scale. This right here where I'm standing is the highest point in the entire game. And if we just look around, every single piece of land that you can see is explorable from top to bottom. Well, except for the background mountains, that's of course there for visual sake. But that's the scale of Odyssey's world. I think I can confidently say that Odyssey also has the most colourful map in the entire franchise. It's very vibrant and I think that's also a big factor why I like the world. Compared to some of the other open world Assassin's Creed games, the worlds in those games are never this vibrant and bright. Take Valhalla for example. That's a game with the most grey and depressing tone, and that kind of rubbed off on you whilst exploring. But I just can't say the same for Odyssey, because the vibrancy of everything just made it all feel so therapeutic when exploring. It even translates to the DLC like Fate of Atlantis. Elysium and Atlantis are easily some of the most beautifully detailed and vibrant areas in the entire series. That is definitely Ubisoft Quebec's biggest strength, which is world design. They just know how to make a map that looks visually appealing. Shame about what's within them, but hey, that's another topic for another day. Look at Syndicate. In my opinion, Syndicate has the most detailed map in the entire franchise. And yeah, even more than Unity or the Renaissance games. Odyssey also nails the naval side of the game too, as there is quite literally a gigantic ocean out there to explore. Well, I say explore, it's just mostly going from point A to point B, but occasionally you get into ship battles. Now yes, the map can feel a bit too massive at times. You are definitely going to come across a lot of copy-pasted forts, bandit camps and urban environments for sure, but that's kind of the trade-off with the world this big. Only a studio like Rockstar or CD Projekt Red have the balls to make every single area of a map feel different. This is Ubisoft we're talking about, so repetition is kind of expected. Sometimes it even feels like they padded things out just to make the map feel even bigger than what it should be. But even with that, it's still not hard to enjoy just existing in this setting. The sheer scale and vibe of ancient Greece makes up for a lot of the repetitiveness. But yeah, as much as I love it, I can acknowledge the flaws, which is why I place myself in that third type of fan category I mentioned at the start of the video. And the biggest flaw for me about Odyssey's world is parkour. The actual parkour system is not what it was. There are no consistent ejects, there's no mechanics that we used to expect, the jumping barely reaches an efficient distance, and it's just automated beginner-friendly nonsense. Assassin's Creed Shadows did correct this thankfully, but some would say too little too late. There is the movement system itself, which is just quite bit basic. It's still the very same overly simplified one from Origins. There's no sprint button, no jump button, nothing you can really master. You just press forward and your character does all the work. It feels completely automated, as I said, with barely any skill expression. The worst part is that eventually at like level 20 or 25, the game just removes fall damage entirely. So even that little bit of risk where a mistake could actually cost you, that goes completely. And let's ignore the parkour system for a second. What about the parkour routes? Well, this game lacks any of it. Every single city, town or village feels like it was not designed with Assassin's Creed parkour in mind. You might say, well, it's ancient Greece, they're trying to be historically accurate. There weren't that many tall buildings. But here's the thing, they didn't need to stick 100% to history. This is a franchise that's based on historical fiction with alterations in the environments. Look at Black Flag. The Cathedral of Havana did not exist during the time of the game, yet they still featured it right there and nobody bats an eye. You can still be authentic to the time period while designing rooftops, balconies or pathways that actually flow well for parkour. In fact, let me show you something. Ubisoft even admitted recently that this was a problem. The game's world designer Ban Hall said the team realized ancient Greece just did not have enough verticality. A lot of what I'm about to say from this point is taken from what he said. He mentioned that the franchise is a climbing frame franchise, and that's fair, right? It's all about scaling cathedrals or monuments, sinking viewpoints, diving into haystacks from crazy heights. But ancient Greece wasn't exactly full of vertical buildings. In fact, the average type of building was something sort of like the Parthenon, which is stunning, sure, but it's only like 14 meters tall, not exactly a parkour playground. So what did Ubisoft do? Well, they got creative. They added giant statues, huge myth-inspired landmarks that don't necessarily make sense historically, but give you something interesting to climb. Stuff like the Zeus statue. It's a bit of historical fiction mixed with, okay, we need cool climbable stuff, and you know, I get it. It gave us those moments of vertical exploration the series is known for, even if the setting did not naturally allow for it. But I don't understand why they didn't create parkour routes within the towns or cities. It's not against the law to do that. They should have done that for Athens. That's a massive city, right? Imagine if they created parkour routes in Athens that connected from building to building. That would have been fantastic. Nobody would get offended if they altered the layout slightly to smoothly integrate tightropes, wooden beams, closer buildings and stuff like that. Now let's talk about the side content, because after all, this is an open world RPG game, and with all open world RPG games, side content is a huge factor to consider what makes a good game, and the side quests in Odyssey are quite good. And I know that might sound strange for an open world Ubisoft game, but hear me out. Unlike the older Assassin's Creed games where side content was mostly filler, such as, you know, collecting feathers, flags and climbing towers, Odyssey's side content actually feels alive and often tells little self-contained stories that are memorable. Now, of course, when I think of the best open world games with the best side quests, it's always the likes of Red Dead Redemption 2, Cyberpunk, Ghost of Tsushima and Dying Light 1. Assassin's Creed Odyssey falls into a tier lower than those in terms of the side quests, but a lot of them are still enjoyable. They often at times have unexpected depth. They're not just go here, kill this guy, done. Well, those still exist, but many of them introduce interesting characters, branching choices that matter, and even light-hearted moments that break up the serious main story. Take the One Really Bad Day quest, for example. It's funny and random in the best way. Then you have the quest chains like the Goddess Hunt with Daphne, where you're tracking mythical beasts across Greece, each fight escalating until the questline culminates in a bittersweet finale. It's optional content, but it feels meaningful and rewarding, way more than just a fetch quest. What I also love is how these quests give the world more personality. Odyssey's Greece is massive, and it could have easily felt empty. But these side stories make each island or city feel distinct. The Mykonos arc, the Kythera questline, the You're Secretly a God quest, all of these stick in your head because they're tied to unique locations and characters. Some even intertwine with Greek mythology, like Medusa's Temple or the Minotaur Labyrinth. Again, another comparison to Valhalla, where side content in that game often felt like very fast world events. Assassin's Creed Odyssey actually gave you reason to slow down and take your time with the content. In fact, it's not crazy to say some side quests here feel better written than parts of the main story, but that's not really saying much because I wasn't much of a fan of the main story. But speaking of the main story, let's talk about why I'm not a fan of it. The story of Odyssey is one of mixed feelings, and this is especially evident in the way it was written. This is where the game really stumbles for me. On paper, Assassin's Creed Odyssey's story has an interesting setup, to be fair, as it separates itself from the generic revenge plot that this franchise is plagued with. Instead, it's a convoluted tale about family, betrayal, a mysterious cult, and even ties to Greek mythology in Atlantis. But in practice, it feels unfocused and quite messy. The pacing is all over the place, with three major storylines being the family reunion, the cult of Cosmos, and the Atlantis part, which, by the way, I know I wasn't the only one confused and thought I had a DLC installed when I ran into the Atlantis part of the main story. Now, all of these major storylines I mentioned run in parallel, but you see, the big problem is that these individual stories never really connect together in a strong, cohesive narrative. Instead of a driving plot that pulls you in, it often feels like you're jumping between disconnected storylines without any sort of emotion. Take the family storyline for example. It should be the emotional heart of the game, right? But it never quite lands. In fact, the only emotional part was when Cassandra reunited with Marine, but that's quite literally it. Cassandra's willingness to reconcile with her other family members feels rushed and inconsistent. You're told she's been abandoned for years, carrying all this resentment, but then she suddenly pivots to forgiveness without enough build-up. The game wants those reunion moments to feel meaningful, but because the writing doesn't fully develop those relationships, the emotional payoff just isn't there, and that problem repeats across the entire story. You know, big reveals or crazy twists just happen, without enough grounding to make them impactful. The dialogue doesn't help either. It swings between serious and silly with no clear tone. You're often given choices that seem like they'll shape the story, but they don't really matter. Worse, the game sometimes contradicts itself. You can pick one response in a conversation, but the following scene acts like you said the opposite. It's like the story never fully commits to the RPG style choice system it tries to embrace. Now, despite the shaky writing, Cassandra herself is a positive for me. She's a great protagonist. I found her to be quite funny and has a spark of humanity that keeps her from feeling like a generic RPG character. Melisanthe Mahout's performance carries so much personality, and she makes Cassandra likable, even when the script isn't at its best, and that's why she feels like the real main character. Alexios, on the other hand, comes off flat, and kind of awkward by comparison. His voice acting lacks nuance, making him feel almost like a caricature rather than a believable hero, and I'm pretty sure that's not a coincidence. Cassandra was originally intended to be the sole protagonist of Odyssey. She was written to fit the story's tone, and she's literally the canonical character. But you see, Ubisoft's executives forced the team to add Alexios in late in development, as they worried that a female main protagonist would not sell as well. That decision undermined the story because it was never truly built for two protagonists. It was always Cassandra's story. She feels natural in the role, while Alexios feels tacked on. So yeah, I've always felt like the story of Odyssey with Cassandra had glimmers of something great, but you see, it's buried under weak pacing, uneven writing, and even poor creative compromises. Now let's shift focus and talk about a positive. Assassin's Creed Odyssey does a fantastic job with the integration of Greek mythology into its world, and it does so in a way that feels both interesting for the culture and surprisingly grounded in Assassin's Creed lore. Well, kind of. Now, the beauty of Odyssey's approach is that it doesn't just drop mythological creatures and gods into the story for the sake of spectacle. Instead, it reinterprets those ideas through the lens of the ezio, who, as we know, are the ancient hyper-advanced civilization that forms the backbone of this franchise. In this way, the myths of Medusa, the Minotaur, and Cyclops are not necessarily fantasy creatures that Quebec added for no reason at all, like they did in Shadows. If you know, you know. They are the remnants of ezio experiments to technology that shaped the stories the ancient Greeks would later tell. If you want to know a lot more about how these mythological creatures tie into the ezio with their pieces of Eden that they drop once you kill them and what they mean, then check out this video I made. Now, what I said is important because it keeps Odyssey tethered to the Assassin's Creed science fiction roots. Technically, this is an Assassin's Creed game because everything mythological has an ezio explanation. The monsters are not supernatural, they're the byproducts of forgotten science so advanced that it might as well be magic. Atlantis itself is reimagined as an ezio city, connecting a legendary myth to the overarching Assassin's Creed lore. So even while you're fighting these crazy looking mythological monsters or finding Atlantis, it still technically fits within the franchise's lore instead of just abandoning it entirely for fantasy. Now, the idea of whether it ruins the lore because of how it contradicts everything before the RPG games, yeah, that's something worth discussing and definitely for a separate video. Now let's move away real quick from the ezio lore. The actual Greek mythology itself is handled with so much care, and that's something Assassin's Creed does super well at. Ancient Greece was a world where mythology was everywhere. Odyssey captures that cultural stuff beautifully. You can actually meet historical figures like Socrates, Pericles, Herodotus, and so many more, and their conversations with you reflect the philosophical values of the time. You can see a statue of Sisyphus, who is said to have a punishment where he must roll a boulder up a hill. There's a giant snake skeleton just there hanging over some ruins. There's a statue of Apollo fighting a python snake. Ubisoft added so many cool Greek cultural references, which I think deserves a round of applause. But then what's also cool is that in the same world that you're playing in, you can face Medusa in Lesbos or the Minotaur in Crete. It's all tied together with side quests and lore that respects the mythology while reframing them. The game also cleverly uses the idea that myth becomes history and history becomes legend. In fact, if you did a lot of the side quests, you can stumble upon some people referring to the monsters like the Cyclops, thinking they're just stories, and then you stumble upon the very real thing. And because the game ties these creatures to the ezio, it reinforces that mythology was humanity's imperfect way of remembering things that they fully did not understand. I do think out of the 4 RPG games this franchise has, Odyssey's depiction of mythology and culture is definitely the most accurate, and I've spoken to a friend from Greece who loves Odyssey because it's so accurate in everything, the buildings, the culture, you name it. I like the idea of being hunted in the game, whilst also doing the hunting, and that is exactly the mercenary and cult of Cosmos idea that Odyssey does well at. Maybe it's the unpredictable nature of mercenaries hunting you down that makes it appealing to me, or maybe it's the replay value it provides. The mercenaries, for example, feel like an actual wanted system. When you rack up a bounty, you never quite know when some random mercenary will show up to hunt you down. It's quite a mess, but in the best way possible. Sometimes you'll even encounter mercenaries that literally have pet lions in the middle of a city, which makes no sense, but hey, it's fun. Other times the mercenary system can be straight up annoying, especially early on when you're underleveled and always run into mercenaries. But that's the beauty of it, it keeps you on your toes. You can always pay off the bounty, but I actually like letting it climb up just to see how crazy the fights can get. And you know, the fact that you can recruit mercenaries for your ship is a nice bonus too. Oh, and even getting this flame horse as a reward for being the top mercenary is a nice touch. Then there's the Cult of Cosmos. This system is different but just as satisfying. Instead of being hunted, you're hunting them, and it turns the whole world into a kind of giant investigation. Cult members are not just tied to the main story because there are so many of them which are completely optional, hidden behind clues and side quests. That goes back to the side content I mentioned earlier and how I liked Assassin's Creed Odyssey's approach with it. It made the world feel more interconnected and gives you more of a reason to actually explore the map. I will say that both systems are definitely not for everyone. The mercenaries can feel intrusive and hunting cultists can sometimes feel grindy, but you know, for me they add a lot to this game's idea of being a big open world RPG, which is definitely how you should approach this game. I want to end this video on a big fat negative, discussing something that's quite disappointing, and I know I will get some heat for this, but I want to talk about it anyway, and that's microtransactions in 2025. The idea of microtransactions in a single player game, so not a multiplayer game, is a blatant exploitive trend in modern gaming, and Ubisoft and the RPG Assassin's Creed games are a perfect example of this. I mean, just look at this. This is what Odyssey's store looks like in 2025, and I'm not even going to skip ahead or change footage. It's an absolute monstrosity, bloated with endless overpriced cosmetic armor sets, mounts, ship skins, weapons, time savers, resource packs, and other nonsense that should have been actual in-game rewards. It's disgusting how far they've taken it. The worst part is how obvious it feels that the game was built with microtransactions in mind. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is a huge game, but it is padded with grind, as I mentioned earlier. Leveling up takes longer than it should. Upgrading your ship eats up a ridiculous amount of resources, and some areas feel like they were designed to slow you down on purpose, so Ubisoft can sell you quote-unquote solutions in the store. Their whole idea is that if you don't want to grind, give them your hard-earned money and buy the permanent XP boost. If you need materials for upgrades, then swipe your card. Same for outfits too. People will say it's just optional, but no, it's baked into the development of the game and how the game plays, and a lot of people don't realize it. You will always see a bunch of people say, but it's optional, you don't have to buy it. Sure, technically you don't, you're right. but the existence of microtransactions changes how developers design the game. Without them, progression would feel natural and rewarding. With them, it feels padded and just frustrating enough to tempt you into spending money. Ubisoft created the problem so they can sell you the fix, and it's baffling how that goes over so many people's heads. I've always had the belief that microtransactions have no business being in single player games. I see some of my favorite YouTubers I watch promote this stuff, and it's a shame. Just think how different a game like Odyssey would be if there were no microtransactions. The development would change drastically, and the game would be more designed around being rewarded through the actual game with some nice loot. And there we have it. That was my kind of mixed opinion Odyssey look back. Like I said at the start of the video, this is not a full review or a deep retrospective. Just to look at how the game feels in 2025, especially after all the hype has died down, and most importantly after playing Assassin's Creed Shadows. So what do you guys think of Odyssey these days? Personally, I still like it. It's far from perfect, and yes, it has plenty of flaws, but as an open world RPG game, it's still a pretty fun experience. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one.